Hello, and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynn Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. I just want to give a shout out to Rounded, our sponsor, because I know for me, my quarterly BAS used to be so stressful. But I love Rounded because everything is there and so tidy, Rach.
I know, no more shoe boxes of receipts. I also really love that my accountant can log into the program remotely and help me with lodgement. Just do it without me needing to even worry about it.
That's what we love.
But best of all, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan. Even if you've got the Rounded discount last year, you can get it this year as well.
Awesome. The show notes always have the details.
Yeah.
Hi, Rachel, and we are back. It's been such a lovely break after the whirlwind that was the summit, and it's great to be back in the hot seat again.
Yes.
I've been catching up on my writing work now the summit's over. What about you?
I have not been catching up on my writing work. No, I've been down south for the past week, so
Lovely.
That has been very relaxing. So I'm trying to put my brain back together. And yeah, we're kicking off the new season with one of our summit panelists, which is very exciting. Those of you who are listening who came to the summit may have spoken to Stephen Lewis or heard him on the panel on day 2. And we wanted to delve into, a bit more about what he does, email marketing, some systems stuff, didn't we? So yeah, let's get him in the hot seat. Do you want to give Stephen an introduction?
Love to. So Stephen Lewis started writing for websites in 1993, right at the beginning. So I'm sure he's going to talk about that. And he's been writing professionally as a journalist and direct response copywriter ever since. His journalism is run in publications such as the Financial Times and Esquire on topics as diverse as adventure racing and the surveillance state. He runs the copywriting agency Tailist and has lectured in PR and journalism. His book on public relations has been taught at Sydney University and translated for international distribution. Tailist has popular online copywriting courses as well as courses in using ChatGPT for marketers and communicators. He founded The Obvious Choice, which is a community for consultants, coaches, and small business owners who want to cement themselves as the obvious choice for their ideal clients. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot. When do you sleep?
When you're very, very old.
Well, I say that to people. Sometimes they say, how come you know this? And I said, I think I've been working this business for 20 more years or 30 more years than you have. That would explain it.
It's true.
I hope you get a weekend off occasionally. It sounded like you might not.
But you have such a relatable background, Stephen, because many of our listeners are former journalists. So tell us a little bit about your career journey.
Well, I was lucky because I grew up in Hong Kong. So in the 90s, after university in the UK, so I went to school in Hong Kong, university back in the UK, and then back to Hong Kong. And being a permanent resident in Hong Kong in the 90s meant you could work for anybody you wanted to. So I ended up freelance editing some legal journals. And I remember vividly one day I was editing some total shite from a lawyer. And I thought, hang on a minute, you wanted to be the writer, not the editor. That was your dream. And we all lose our path, right? Sometimes you end up, one day you wake up, go, hang on a minute, I wanted to be a jazz dancer. So I wrote a column, a hilarious column, witty as hell.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, it was so funny. If only I still had it. And I sent it to a few editors in Hong Kong, and one of them, who happened to be an Australian woman, wrote back to me and said, I need another white male columnist, like I need a hole in the head, but what else can you do? And I was really lucky because I'd actually been on an adventure race working with a camera crew in a very lowly position, but I paid attention while I was there and I could actually write a feature about it. So I pitched that to her and I got the feature, and it was the cover of the Sunday magazine for the South China Morning Post. And that was my debut. And I ended up writing a lot for the South China Morning Post and other publications. But I was just lucky that I was in this tiny market, because if you're English speaking, Hong Kong is basically Wagga, right? It's not, yes, it's an international city of 7 million people where wonderful things happen, but the English speaking population is about the size of Wagga. So if you want to give something a go, you've got a really good chance that if you push hard enough, you can at least open a door.
Yeah, interesting.
Wow. So how did you move from editorial to copywriting?
I wrote a lot about technology and the internet because, as you mentioned earlier, I had started building and writing websites in the early 90s when nobody was doing that. So then when newspapers got interested, they needed people who understood what the internet was, and I did. So I had a column in the Sunday paper about the internet, for instance. And what happens again in Hong Kong in its guise as the Asian Wagga is that companies like Intel see your byline and think, oh, good, here is an English-speaking person who can string a sentence together. We need somebody to write a brochure or a press release or whatever it might be. And so the phone would ring. Again, an incredibly fortunate situation as a writer of content that your phone rang because you were a scarce resource. And that's how I ended up with clients like Coke and Rolex and Microsoft and Intel through zero effort and through having a Sunday magazine showcase.
Although I do think that you're being a bit harsh on yourself there, Steve. Because we say this about women, particularly, that they say they're lucky. It sounds like you could have stuffed it up along the way if your work wasn't good. Yes, you might have had a lucky break, but you made the most of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is, you're right. I was brilliant. And I needed you to say it. So, but, I mean, you're right. I could have cocked it up. So yeah, there's an element of luck. And I suppose the older I get, the more aware of that I am, that people, particularly when you sort of study really rich people, they all think they got there purely on merit, as opposed to the infrastructure was there and they were living in a safe place and, all of those things. And I guess some people understate the amount of luck in their lives, and maybe some of us overstate the amount of luck in our situations.
Mm. Mm.
So tell us a bit about those early days of website copy. I mean, that would have been pre-SEO and any of the, so you probably just wrote good stuff and then it might have got picked up because you didn't have to worry about all that stuff.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a fascinating time because, as I say, starting in, the early 90s, I read an article a while ago that said in that period of time, there were only about 400 websites in the world. So I built some of the first. I mean, they were shit, right? But I built them.
Yeah.
I mean, they were the mud huts of websites, right? They were not the opera house of websites. But you could, you could build them. And back in those days, you could actually buy a yellow pages of websites, by which I mean you could go to a bookshop and buy yellow pages of the world's most interesting websites. That's how few there were.
Yeah.
And you'd go to clients and you'd say, you need a website. And they would say, that sounds interesting. What is a website? And you'd spend half an hour explaining what a website was. And they'd say, okay. Now, we've also heard of this thing called email. What's email? And so you spent an hour having to teach somebody what you sold and then have them say, oh, no, look, we've got an ad in the yellow pages, so we're set. So that's what it was like writing websites back then, is that actually nobody was buying. So what I did was start what we didn't call a blog then, because that was a term that wasn't invented till the 2000s. We called them zines. And I had a zine called HK Zine, because I was in Hong Kong and it was a zine. And it reviewed movies. And it was entirely because I wanted free film tickets. So
fair enough. Good
again,
reason.
I did have the gumption. I started this zine and then I wrote to the PR people for films and got myself tickets to the screenings of movies for free. It was when I worked for the South China Morning Post, there's an English word, which I didn't know until then, called lig, which is, the word is lig, meaning getting things for free. And I was known as the king of the lig because I loved a free thing.
I think the other word for that is blagger.
Sounds about right. Like, I mean, I went to Sweden, I went to Italy. I mean, I had trips. I went to Houston. because the full-time journalists couldn't accept these trips because they, had the whiff of corruption. But they didn't mind a freelancer taking the trip and get the article in the paper. So I was very happy to take the gigs that they couldn't. So that's been a big part of my career. So if you want me to say something nice, send me a pen and I'm yours.
It's so funny, like talking about those early days of the internet, because I remember being at uni in, a feature writing class, and they were talking about, there's this thing called email. And then my first job, there was internet relay chat. And then one of my first freelance gigs was actually reviewing websites. But like you say, there were hardly any, so you really had to kind of scavenge around looking for interesting things. I was doing that for internet.au magazine, which, doesn't exist anymore, but was quite cool. Quite cool in its day. Yeah. Wow. So, and talk to us about when the agency started and how you started sort of bringing more clients into the fold and that sort of thing.
I started a social media agency in the 2000s, which was exactly the same mistake as the internet. Like 10 years later, I repeated the same mistake when people would say to me, what is a blog? What is a podcast? What is a wiki? And then I ended up going to work for a bank that was foresighted enough to be wanting to use social media internally. So I ended up there for a while, but I really like working for myself. So what I managed to do there was to go 3 days a week and then build up the agency in the other 2 days. And that was something that came up at the summit, that there is no shame in, and I wanted to say this at the summit, but I didn't because it wasn't appropriate to our panel. I felt it was a digression, but I saw the bank as a client. I had a 3-day-a-week client. I was not an employee, and they would know. It was very clear I did not see myself as an employee. It's not in the way I supported myself around the place. I saw them as a client and me as a consultant who happened to be there 3 days a week, and the other 2 days a week I had other clients. And it's a mindset thing. And during those 2 days, I built up enough other clients to be able to go full time into the agency, which I think was around. I love people who post on Instagram with the balloon saying, I've been in business for 12 years, 3 days and 4 hours. And I'm like, I can't remember. I've had so many businesses. I can't remember when one was born and one died. But I think it was around about 2015 that Taylor's became a full-time business. And we have mostly sort of written websites in the beginning and then moved into email and then really moved into training because I like empowering is a word I don't like because it's grossly overused, but I like giving people the confidence to write as themselves, whether they are business owners or other content writers, to stop writing the gibberish that we are forced to write from school onwards and actually to use words in the way that they are best used. And that is my greatest fulfillment, is helping people to do that. So that's the direction we've really moved in now. And that's why I say personality-driven email newsletters are so important to me, because clients are so frightened of sounding stupid that they just write crap. And then when you show them how to write like themselves and people respond to it, it's like you freed somebody from a kind of mental jail.
Yeah.
It is really interesting because we talked a little bit off air about email marketing, and I love the idea of a personality-driven newsletter. So tell us a little bit about why email is a good choice when you're coming to a part of the marketing mix.
For me, because I love a shiny thing, right? I've always loved a shiny thing. So,
Clearly, that's why you're an early adopter of all these things.
Like building websites when you had to unplug your phone and plug it into your computer. And
I remember those days.
Yes, when I first had email, literally you went through all that rigmarole of plugging in, dialing up the internet, and I only knew one guy, Chris, with an email address. So if Chris hadn't sent me an email, I had an empty inbox, right? That was what,
so sad.
what it was. Yeah, so sad, so lonely, and such a waste of time. So because I've got to phone Chris, like that's the daft stuff. But the thing with email is it's never changed. So yes, there are spam filters and things, but if you are not a spammer, you don't actually have that much to fear from spam filters, right? So if you put that to one side, there's no algorithm telling you that your dance isn't on trend enough, or oh no, it's not carousels this week, it's videos. We like, oh no, your video's 31 seconds and 27 is what our algorithm says is going to work today. So there's none of that. You build an audience, you write what you want to say, you hit send, they get it. And they get to decide whether they want to get it again or they don't. There's nothing happening in the middle. And the question that I ask people is, you talk about building an audience on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but have you built an audience if you don't decide whether they get to see or hear or watch what it is that you've made? And that's why I'm in 2024 going right back to where I was in 1994, that actually email, it's like, I don't know, it's like the person, it's like the friend you suddenly turn to after 30 years and realize you're the love of my life. I should have been with you the whole time. I kept going for these buff, looking beefcakes, and actually it was you the whole time. Like it's a Netflix Christmas movie. I'm back to email and I'm happy and I'm not leaving it.
Yeah, I am a subscriber to your emails and have been for a while, since when we discovered you and wanted to get you into the summit. So I love reading your emails. There was one that you put out today about a lawyer, Fiona, who, didn't think that anyone would be interested in what anyone had to say about her law firm. And, I think she did your course and all of that. I mean, how do you help someone like that who's in a typically really dry kind of niche, but they still want to connect with their audience?
Classic copywriting, in the sense that Fiona is a phenomenal lawyer who's really good at what she does. And that is one of the reasons why lawyers have always frustrated me so much, because I've got a lot of lawyer clients and they're worried about looking stupid in front of the other kids. And they've got all the imposter syndrome that anybody could ever have. But all of the ones that I've worked with are genuinely expert in what they do. They really know stuff, and interesting stuff and useful stuff. And when Fiona took the course, Newsletter Magic, she said that nobody's ever going to want to read a newsletter about the law. And I said, you're absolutely right. They're not. They want to read a newsletter about business, and you understand business through the lens of the law. So if you write to them about their business problems through the lens of the law in an interesting, personality-driven way, and I should explain, personality-driven just means you're putting yourself into it. You're not writing passively in the third person. You might mention shock, horror, you've got children, or you live on the South Coast, or you like a bloody key lime pie. So unprofessional. So you get a little bit of yourself into it, and people are feeling they get to know you, but mostly it's about the reader and entertaining them and giving them interesting stuff. And Fiona's got, her emails are absolutely brilliant, because she's just seen people pulling the most outrageous stunts, and people, her clients, not being protected against those because they hadn't gone to a lawyer in time, because they thought, I'll write my own contract. And then shit hits the fan and you go to Fiona, and Fiona says, well, clearly your contract should have said this, that, or the other, or whatever it might be. So she wrote an email newsletter the other day about a client of hers who'd employed somebody who'd put screenshot grabbing software all over their computers, and then said to their client, well, there's no duty of confidentiality in the contract, so it doesn't matter that we've taken photos of all your employees entering their passwords. And I mean, just outrageous behavior made for a great newsletter. So, sorry, that was a very long answer to a short question. And the answer is, you make the email about what your readers want to read about, which isn't the law. It's about protecting themselves from ne'er-do-wells.
But we also talked a little bit just at the beginning, Rach mentioned about storytelling, and that story about Fiona telling a story, it resonates much more than talking about why a contract is important. Putting that sort of storytelling lens is really important to, it makes it memorable.
I had some interesting feedback when I ran the course the first time, because the way that I've structured it, in the second week of the course, everybody gets to write one email a day and I will review it. So I review everybody's emails individually in detail that blows their minds, right? Because people are like, you're going to send some feedback that says, yeah, this is pretty good, but it loses some steam around the third paragraph. And I'm line by line, word by word. Why doesn't this work?
I'm just a bit scared now. Yeah.
I want to sign up now.
Well, in the beginning, sometimes they find it, but I think what comes across is I really want them to do better. So I'm not making anyone feel bad. I'm like, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. I want you to improve that. this is why, you're losing people here. And actually, I mean, the number of times I've said to people, this feels like two emails that you've sort of smashed together, and they're like, how could you tell that? Because yeah, that is true, that I'd written two drafts about two different things. And then I thought, but you can tell if you don't. Anyway, so you go through and you're sort of reading and you're bringing that out. And in the second week of the course, I just have them tell a story. Like, it's not they're not trying to persuade anybody of anything. They're not trying to match it to an offer. And I had some feedback like, I don't understand why you're doing that. It's like, you just need to relax. Tell us a story, and I'll show you later how to make an offer on the back of that story, or how to tie that story to pivot into a business point. But just that relaxing into, oh my God, I can write about my grandchildren, and that is okay. And I can say, I was having coffee the other day and somebody with a strange haircut went past, and that made me think of this other thing. And all of that's okay. And it's much more interesting than saying, the Australian Consumer Commission has, just released a report. Not interesting.
I would love to ask you, is there a bit of an art to that, what you were just mentioning, like writing the story and then linking it to an offer or making your business point? Is that like kind of a muscle that that gets easier and easier the more you do it?
Yes. And the people who've taken the course tell me that at first there's that resistance. So my model is entertain, train, and sell. Yeah. And entertaining scares the shit out of people to start with, right? Because they're like, oh my God, I could never have a Netflix special, or, I'm not the person people gravitate towards at a party. So I make it very clear to people that entertain, if you were to go to the dictionary, is merely to divert people in a pleasurable way. It doesn't mean you have to be Hannah Gadsby. It just means you're better than the other shit in their inbox to start with, right? So The Economist is entertaining if you're interested in world news. So that's entertaining. It's not a laugh a minute. So that's the entertaining part. So you open with something that's going to grab people's attention, and over time you learn how to be able to do that. And then training is, you've got to train people that they've got to respond. They've got to open your emails. They're going to respond. They're going to click. They're going to do something. And then you want to sell something. So you need to pivot from that entertaining to actually getting the reader to do something. And if you look at all of my emails, there's an entertain part, and then I'm not trying to be clever and hide it. There's a sentence that says, and that brings me to my point, or whatever it might be. And that made me think of this thing that I'd like to sell you. Like, doesn't have to be super clever. You're not trying to, that's the beauty of email, is the ability to be authentic and genuine. But the trap that people fall into is that they don't sell, and then they upset people when they do try to sell, because people are like, I thought we were friends, and now you've become an Amway rep, and I'm really unhappy.
Wow. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, all your emails are very storytelling driven. So talk us through your system of coming up with those ideas, organizing them. Do you kind of come up with the idea and then think, I can tie it to the offer this way? Or is that an organic thing that happens while you're writing the email? How do you organize it all?
A lot of it comes from, I'll be reading a book, and it could be fiction, nonfiction, or a newspaper, similar. And I'll think, oh, okay, that's an interesting point. Or that story makes me think of something. Or I feel one day in the future I'll be able to use that. So if it's a physical book, I then take a photograph, feed that photograph into chat. I used to just take the photograph and put it into a system, but now I take the photograph with ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to transcribe it so that I've got text. Then I use Notion, which is a database note-taking software, and I have an email newsletter database within that. So I might take an idea, put it in there, and just leave it with some kind of headline that reminds me of what it is, so that because I write 5 days a week. So if I can't think of something to write tomorrow morning, I'll go into that and flick through these ideas. Sometimes I'll think that will tie nicely into promoting Newsletter Magic, for instance. So I'll tag that story as Newsletter Magic. But the art is generally, if you give me 5 stories, I'll show you how to pivot to whichever one of your offers you need to pivot them to, because most good stories that will be of interest to your readers can then be tied to whatever it is that you want to sell. So Lynn told us a story off air about giving her grandchildren ice cream, for instance.
Yes.
I could take that story and tie that to 5 different Lynn offers, because that could be a story about the tension between grandparents and parents about treats and, what's a treat and what's not a treat and what's a life lesson. Or it could be a story about dairy and responses to dairy, or children's delight. Or if you find a different moral, and if you work backwards then from your offer to that story, you'll find the moral in the story that ties to the offer.
So interesting.
Wow.
So do you think that emails are a business opportunity for writers, both to promote our own businesses, but also it's a good service to offer to our clients?
I think it's a phenomenal service to offer to clients, because clients often can't do it themselves, right? Because they're too close to themselves, so they can't see. So either you're like Fiona, whom we talked about earlier, and you're willing to learn and you're willing to sort of break it down, or you need someone to get in there and ask you the right questions. What did you do at the weekend? What are you trying to, okay, well, here's a story, here's a thing. What do you think about that? I've thought of some ideas for you. And then go away and write it. Because again, for the business owner, your client, you could be looking at 3 hours to write. I mean, one of my emails probably takes me somewhere between half an hour and an hour every morning, and I've been writing for a really long time. It would take some of my clients 5 hours to write that email.
Yeah.
And I write an email, as I say, 5 days a week. So if a client was going to email weekly, which is frankly the minimum that I would recommend, then you are a massive opportunity for them, in that they get to talk to you. You ask them some clever questions. You go away, you write it in their voice, and they are building relationships. So I've got a client, for instance, we write their newsletter. She got a hug and a kiss from one of her potential clients the other day at a conference. Never seen the guy before in her life, but he feels he knows her because he gets these emails, and she's been on a holiday with her family and it was camping and this thing happened and that thing happened. He feels like he's been getting letters from a friend. So he greets her with a hug. They don't know each other.
Interesting.
So what do you do? So you will still work on like an email sequence, or, an email project for a client, and you'll do a discovery call that gets all their stories and then supply the emails ready for them to schedule. Is that kind of a typical project for Taylorist?
Exactly. So she writes a weekly email newsletter. We know who their clients are and what sort of jobs their clients do and what they want to promote. And then our job is to find themes for, say, the month about a particular service they might offer, and then how to tie that in with either some work that they've been doing or something that's happened around the office, or, she's just got a cat, so there's been a bit about the cat recently, and then that ties into things that they do for work. So people really feel that they know her. So she's had people that she's phoned up say, oh yeah, how's the cat? How's your daughter? How's the camping holidays? How are those sorts of things? Because again, yes, we write them and she doesn't, which they don't know. But it's not inauthentic any more than JFK saying I'm a Berliner was inauthentic because he didn't write the line, right? Nobody looks at that and thinks, well, I wonder who wrote Obama's speeches, because that is the person that I should credit with hope or whatever it might be. It's still an authentic means of communication, because she's communicated to us and we've communicated it to her clients.
Wow. So if you're taking on a project like that, how do you start to, price it?
I'd be looking at, it's not inexpensive. To be perfectly, and inexpensive is such a stupid word anyway, that one should have trained oneself out of 3 decades ago, because it's what kind of work is coming across the, because you've got these emails going. So again, if we go back to Fiona, it's a really good example. She does not have a big mailing list, but she's a lawyer, right? So if she gets a litigation matter, that could be $250,000 in fees. So she doesn't need a big, she's not selling $7 tripwire offers, right? She's, a lifetime value of a client is a big deal to her. So leaving the expensive aside, I'm looking at time. How difficult is and I never bill on time, by the way. I should say we only do project fees, which is something else I learned in Hong Kong, because Chinese people want the transparency. They assume, frankly, that you're going to rip them off with an hourly rate. And why not? It's such a silly way of doing things because you might well rip them off. Or, as often happens to me, if I do end up quoting an hourly rate, as I occasionally do, people think it's expensive. And I'm like, but you don't know how long I'm going to take, let alone how well I'm going to do. You just know that other person is a lot cheaper.
But they could take twice as long. So you're sort of being punished for your efficiency, aren't you?
Exactly. And I've actually said that to people, like, why are you wanting? I'm really good and I'm really fast and I've studied at this for a really long time. Why should I be punished for that and charge less than the person who's shit and takes 3 times longer? Like that, it makes no sense. So therefore we charge everything on a project fee. But of course, you're going back to time. You are thinking behind the scenes.
Internally, yeah.
Yeah. How complicated it, because we've all had the person email us, how much for a website? You're like, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
How much to build a house? Well, is the house for Zuckerberg or the Unabomber? Like, whose house are we building, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at how difficult is your area, right? So if you're a marketing agency or a digital marketing agency, I already know a lot about your business, and therefore it's not going to be as hard for me to understand what you're saying to me. But if you sell, I don't know, some form of science, that's going to take me some more time to understand. So I'm really factoring that sort of thing in. But I am now really clear with clients that I will save you time. But if time saving is your number one priority, then I am not the droid you're looking for, because I want your time, because my skill is communicating your expertise, not reading your mind remotely and producing things that you will magically love because I pinned the tail on the donkey.
Yeah.
So where do you find your clients and how do you approach like onboarding clients? We talked a little bit about this at the summit. Tell us where they come from. Is it word of mouth? I think that happens the longer you've been in business.
It's word of mouth and lead magnets that they find, either because we put them up on LinkedIn, although I'll be honest, LinkedIn used to be good for me in that I could get views, but now, for whatever reason, I'm in some sort of, I say LinkedIn jail as if it's been done to me, but it may just be I'm not interesting enough. But whatever it is, I'm not dancing the sexy enough dance for the LinkedIn algorithm. So it's not coming from that. But it's SEO. So we put some work into SEO. So we show up for some of the right things, and we make, I mean, it's pop-up galore time on our website, for instance. And, people hate pop-ups. So oh no, I would never have a pop-up. Well, that's just stupid. Because pop-ups work, right? Like, you don't like them, but they work. Like, we've got pop-ups on our website that convert at 9 or 11%. So that's a lot of people you'd be missing if you didn't have the pop-up. So new clients come from lead magnets, where they get nurturing sequences over time. And lots of them come from having been on the newsletter for a couple of years. Like, that's for a lot of our type of clients, because I like working with smaller businesses, they're really nervous about spending the money that copywriting really costs. So it does take them that much time to think, actually, I think this could be worth it. I could actually get good things from investing this kind of money. So word of mouth and lead magnets converted by nurture over time.
Still on that sort of onboarding thing, I know a lot of summit goers found your advice on the business processes panel really refreshing, and especially about the client contracts that you do. Talk us through some of the clauses that you put in and how they land, because I think that was, got a lot of possible laughs, as I recall.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you about how they land is they don't land at all, because I don't think anybody reads them.
Yeah.
We are really transparent. So our proposals come, and then at the end, it says our agreement in a very big H1 style font. There's no small print. The print of the contract is the same. The tone of the contract is the same as the rest of the tone of, it's entirely conversational. Everything that has gone into that contract is the result of somebody brutalizing us over time. Like, somebody did something and you're like, oh, I never thought anyone would do that to us. Right. Okay. Better have that in the contract.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm picturing my contract in my mind, things that I think might be helpful to people, we have a clause in there that says, if you want us to fill in paperwork about your modern slavery stuff or our insurances or whatever, we're going to charge you an hourly rate to fill in that paperwork, because I don't know about you, but I've had so many stupid questionnaires about whether I have slaves in my supply chain. And I'm like, fine. I mean, I'm happy to answer your questions, but it has to be at someone's expense, because I think that's something we have to remember in business.
Yeah.
One of us is always paying.
Yeah.
So you've got to work out, are you happy to pay to answer ridiculous questions about whether your micro business has slaves in it in the content creation world? Like, one of the questions I got asked by a big law firm was, how many suppliers do you have in your supply chain? Like, I don't know. Like, we've got Xero, we've got Combank, we've got ANZ. Like, the list would go on forever. Then they want to know how many suppliers your suppliers have got in their supply chain. I'm like, how am I supposed to know how many suppliers Xero's got? So madness. So we will do that. If you want to give feedback by video, we will charge an hourly rate for handling that, and we will charge you for the transcription, because of course it takes a long time for your client to go, oh yeah, hey Stephen, I was just looking at this, I was thinking, we want track change comments and emails that we can keep in our files. We have a 30-day clause that if we say that this is a collaboration. And I mean collaboration, not in this sort of overused word that we all collaborate with each. You can't buy an ice cream without collaborating with the person serving you the ice cream. I mean, I don't work for you. I'm a consultant. So we are collaborating, and that's the only way we're going to get a result. And if you disappear for 30 days or more, because we always take the money up front for each stage of the work, we're keeping the money and we reserve the right to close the project. That is there entirely to give us leverage if somebody disappears. It's not, I'm not sitting there with a clock going, oh, hang on, one more day and the money's mine. I'm able then to get in touch with you on day 31 and say, hey guys, it's been a while. I've got any idea when it's coming? And then if they're not forthcoming, I can say, well, I might be closing the project. So it's not what I want, but I want to have the control.
And the leverage.
Yeah.
The leverage. The other thing that comes to mind that I think would be really useful for people to consider is, who do you want to own the intellectual property at the end of the exercise? Because I used to, knowing what I know about intellectual property law, I know that if I write you a website and you buy it, you are only buying a license to it, that I do actually still own the website. And I thought, okay, I thought I was very clever by changing my contract to say, and here's a benefit to you, I license you exclusively. Clients didn't understand that because they assume they're getting the exclusive rights to it anyway. And I had a situation where we wrote a brilliant lead magnet for a financial planner. And that lead magnet, I really opened my eyes to the fact that I could actually have gone to a lot of financial planners and licensed this lead magnet to them, which would have done no harm to my client, because I could have done it in different cities and different countries where my client had no intention of operating. And instead, I'd sold all the rights to it to my client, who would only ever use it in one tiny geographic part of one city, but was actually sitting on thousands of dollars of value. And I thought, actually, I don't want to do that. So our contract says, you're buying a license to use this to promote your business. All other rights are ours. And it makes clear that all rights in any research that we've done or anything else that we've done, that's ours as well. Because people will come and say, I want the transcripts of your interviews. And I understand from their point of view, they're thinking, well, you spoke to my clients, in the course of this project, I want that. And I'm thinking, I asked your clients really clever questions that you would never have thought to ask them. And you could take that and you could go away and make something else from that without involving me. And that's value you haven't paid for. You paid for a 4-page website, not my ability to get your clients to say certain things that are valuable in other ways. So we're really clear about that. The IP in our processes and so on is ours. And I have given clients the transcripts before, but it is all about having the choice.
Yes.
Not being the employee who, has to do what they ask, but having the choice to say, oh, sure, I'll give you that, or no, I won't, or that will be an extra, whatever. That's what our contract's about, is about, we're a grown-up business and we have rights too. We are both lucky to be working together, not only one way.
That's so interesting. So like the voice of customer, you wouldn't just put it all in a Google folder and the clients have access to everything. I mean, if they're paying, 10 grand for that whole project, you could sort of bundle that in if you were going to do that. But otherwise,
That's
they
right.
don't have access to the voice of customer. You
No,
just mine it for your copy, and that's what they get, sort of
we
thing.
give them a report, so they
Yeah.
get a report into that. But quite often I might have spoken to one of their customers for half an hour. There's enough in that for them to go away and write a case study or several social media posts, or they could use those for lots of other things. And it took me a long time to realize, when you get an architect to design your house, you don't get the right to build one in Queensland and Melbourne and Tasmania and wherever. You get the right to build that house once. And depending on the rights for the architect then has the right to go and put that house on a different plot of land for a different client, if that's what they want to do. And we're entitled to do that. You are paying me for a 4-page website, not a 4-page website that you could sell to other financial planners in other cities without my getting a share of that. And that is a mindset thing. So we hang on to that and give you what you need and what we've sold you, and we keep the rest.
So how do you repurpose what's left? Like, do you consciously try and sell them that for the case study, or how do you sort of leverage what you've got?
If I were better at this, I would probably, be better at saying, let's have a lead magnet afterwards, or let's have a case study. Really, it's about protecting myself from when they come to me and I know that what they're thinking is, you've spoken to my clients and I think I could find someone who's cheaper than you to turn that into some case studies or whatever. Yeah. And I understand that thinking, and I'm not criticizing them for thinking that way, but you haven't bought it, and I'm not going to give it to you. So it largely for us, it's that protection against somebody taking value that we have created and not remunerating us for that value. And I think that happens a lot because good copywriters give good advice. And I find quite a lot with clients, they're like, oh, can I just give you a call to ask you about this or that or the other? And you're like, I'm writing your website. What you're describing is a different project. And my wife, Fleur, who works in the business with me, came up with this great thing, which I use all the time, which is answer the question they should have asked. So they'll say, oh, can I phone up and get 15 minutes of advice about this? And you say, absolutely, you can. My consulting rate is this. You're absolutely right. That is something I can consult on. And here's the link to book the consulting time for that. You answer the question they should have asked, which is, this is clearly a value to me. How do I remunerate you for the value that I'm asking you to give me? And it's always interesting to see the response, right? Because some of them book in, maybe because they're embarrassed or maybe because they understand. And some of them will find a way to suddenly not need that information from you.
They'll go and ask their brother-in-law instead.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my gosh. Well, talk to us about your courses that you do for copywriters. How do they work? What have you got?
The big one for us is Newsletter Magic, which I'm really pushing because it's the one, frankly, it's the one that gives me the most pleasure. That's terrible, isn't it? That's the benefit to me, is it gives me the most pleasure. But it gives me the most pleasure because for content writers, it gives them a business opportunity, to the confidence to think, oh, I can go and do this, and I can channel somebody else's personality into this, and that you don't need a big personality or a massive list to sell a client on having an email newsletter that isn't dross that no one's ever going to read. It's a 5-week course with live sessions with me. So it's not one of those, you get, and there's nothing wrong with them, I have them as well, where you get video and you get a written lesson and whatever. You do get written material and videos, but there's a live session every week for an hour or 90 minutes. And then over the 5-week course, 2 weeks are exclusively devoted to writing. So every day, the idea is that you would write a draft, get it to me by the afternoon, and by the following day, I will have reviewed it. And everybody sees everybody else's reviews. It's all done by video. So you see a video of me reading your email from the perspective of your ideal client and giving feedback where, this is where I got lost, or I don't quite understand that, or, here's how you could make that better. And what people quickly realize is, one, it's incredibly valuable watching the feedback on other people's drafts, because people make similar mistakes, for want of a better word. or the advice applies to more people. So you get that for 2 weeks, so up to 10 of your drafts. And people say to me, like, they've never had anyone pay that kind of attention to their writing. Because to go to what you were saying, Lynn, you give it to your brother-in-law or whoever it might be, they're not going to take a brief from you. They're not going to pay attention to whom you're writing to and what you're trying to persuade those people of and what their objections are and their mistaken beliefs. So they're not going to listen to any of that. They're going to look at it from their point of view and say, I like footy, and you've used hockey as an analogy, and you're going to be like, great, you've just opened a whole new world for me. Thanks so much. It's that, people you can show these things to generally don't have the patience or the skill to show you how to make yours better.
Copy better.
And to distinguish between what's their personal preference and what's actually good technique or good writing or is true to you, as opposed to, we've all had clients say, but I like purple.
Yeah.
Like, brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Let's make it all purple then. That'll nail it. So that's 5 weeks. And so at the end of those 5 weeks, people exit the course confident to start writing an email newsletter that is truly reflective of who they are and that makes offers. Because I've had mailing lists myself where I have just written on a topic, built a big audience, and then eventually tried to sell them something. And it's like stampeding cattle in the other direction because they're horrified, because they really do feel like, oh, we've become friends now. Yeah. And now you're the friend who has asked if they can come and sell Amway at the next dinner party.
Yeah.
Whereas if you set things up on the right footing, and you'll know, Rachel, because you read the emails, there's no doubt I'm running a business. Like, yes, it's personal, it's friendly, I'm revealing myself, I'm talking about other people who subscribe to it's all real. You've met me. I'm the same person in the email that I am if you meet me. There is nothing disingenuous about it, but it's clearly it's there for a business purpose. So don't email me back if you're just going to be in Sydney and you feel like a beer, right? Like it is a business. And I speak from experience as a journalist. I used to get those emails all the time. Like, oh, I'm going to be in Hong Kong for the day. I'm really interested in buying a digital camera. Can I buy you a beer so you can tell me what digital camera I should buy? No. No, you can't. I would much rather buy my own beer. Thank you.
So what sort of topics do you think that copywriters are looking for when they're doing these sort of courses? Do you get people, obviously email's a big thing, but are there other emerging skills?
ChatGPT would be a big one, I think. And I like teaching ChatGPT because my ChatGPT course, which is called, modestly, it's called ChatGPT Mastery.
Of course.
Very modest.
Very, very modest. Newsletter Magic and ChatGPT Mastery. I like it because what I've done is hidden a persuasive writing course inside a ChatGPT course. So what I've done is take good copywriting, which is build an avatar, right? What are the mistaken beliefs that somebody has? Why aren't they going to buy your widget? And show you how to use ChatGPT to get those answers. So, I mean, the course is probably 50% about using ChatGPT for research into your avatar and 50% for writing and using it as a brainstorming partner. And what the content writers who take the course come away with is new skills in persuasive writing, like things that they haven't thought about doing before, ideas for new services that they can sell. Because you were talking, Rachel, earlier about voice of the customer. We used to do all of this, go and read the forums, go and do whatever. And now you realize ChatGPT's read all the forums. So if you know how to use ChatGPT, you can save yourself hours of work while giving the client incredible value into understanding who their ideal client is and why their ideal client is saying no, and how you could get over that objection because you understand, much better what the avatar is thinking. So, I mean, to give you very briefly an example, I was working with a counselor and building an avatar for her. And it was so interesting because her patient is a teenager who needs emotional resilience, but her ideal client is the mother of that teenager. And if you look at her competitors, their websites are all emotional resilience is terribly important. And a teenager who doesn't have emotional resilience is going to be an arsehole grown up. And, this is a big problem. Through the research into ChatGPT as to what her ideal client, the mother, would be feeling, ChatGPT was coming up with things like, well, you're going to be arguing with the father of the child, because the father of the child is going to think that this is just a phase the teenager's going through, and counseling is for wimps, and you're a hysterical woman who's overreacting. You're going to be arguing with the school because the school doesn't have enough counselors and also thinks this is a phase your kid is going through. Meanwhile, you are torn apart by guilt. Your kid is standing at the edge of a cliff, and you as a mother are all that stands between your child and disaster. So you can imagine how much better a website you got, how much better a conversation you were able to have with your client, the counselor, when you're saying, look, this is what, and she's gone, yeah, that is what they're experiencing. Yes, that is absolutely right. And she validated the whole process because she was her ideal client. She had a teenager who needed counseling, and she's like, yeah, God, I'm arguing with his father all the time. If I hear phase one more time, just a phase, I'll go mental. So the content writers who take that kind of course are like, oh my God, I can do so much with this that isn't just getting it to write a shitty, bland Facebook post, trying to pretend that I wrote it myself and seeing if I can still charge my hourly rate for that. It's like, oh my God, I can go so much deeper and do so much better. And that the robot is not ready to come for my job yet. It's come for the job of the shitty writers, but it can also make you a better writer at the same time. And that's such a great skill.
Wow.
It's interesting because I think one of the biggest challenges for freelance writers right now is, they're wondering if they should cross that bridge and how to do it. And they're worried that if they do cross that bridge, they're going to lose their ability to think and their ability to write because they're handing that over. I mean, is that something that you're seeing? People who are thinking, well, if I hand my thinking over to the robot, I'm going to lose that.
I think that's true. And I think people think that they're commoditizing themselves and that it's somehow dirty. And I understand that. I mean, from early in my career, I used to think if you ask the client too many questions, you're like, the client's going to think you're an idiot. And what are they paying you for? Because you just keep asking questions. Now I realize the questions are what they're paying for. Smart questions are what they're paying for. And sometimes I still feel like such a cheat when I'm sending a website draft in and they love it. And I'm thinking, that's just shit you said that I've just typed up in a slightly cleaner way. But the value was I asked you the question. I got you to say things you would never have thought of saying that are true and valuable and persuasive, but you'd never thought of saying them before because you're too busy saying, I've been doing this job for 25 years, as if that's persuasive. And then you never mention that actually you used to do Marilyn Monroe's hair. And that's probably quite a good thing to be, saying if you're a celebrity vintage stylist. So I think with ChatGPT, the outsourcing of the thinking, when you actually start to realize you've got a brilliant brainstorming partner. I describe ChatGPT as the best colleague you're ever going to have because one, it's never going to be offended when you ask it to do it again. It's never going to be tired. It's never going to get the shits if you prefer your idea to its idea. So you've got this really great partner that you can try things on and bounce things back and forth and, that just get you ahead and mean that you're never looking at the blank page. Like that's the best part of ChatGPT. Like I used to have a course on writing a landing page and I had this whole process in that was really about meaning that you never were staring at a blank page, not knowing what to write. And I think some of the most valuable outputs from courses for copywriters are on how do you just get the first 10 words on the page without having to stare at it and make yourself another cup of coffee and find a reason to do something else.
Wow. Such a great chat, Stephen. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to leave our listeners with some of your favourite sort of tech tips and digital tools. You talked a bit about Notion and obviously ChatGPT. Have you got some others?
Scrivener, the best writing tool ever. But, you're both nodding.
I don't use it personally, but I know people love it, especially authors.
Authors love it.
If you are ever like Word, to write anything more than 2 pages in Word, to me, is insanity because it's just not built for it. And people are like, oh no, I do it all in a Google Doc. I'm like, oh my God, you're just making life so hard for yourself. The story of Scrivener, the fact that a guy went to write a novel and realized it was just going to kill him to do it in Word. So he taught himself to build software so that he could build software that was better for writers, frankly tells you everything you need to know about Scrivener. It is hard, or there has to be an investment in learning it. But my God, that investment is worth it.
Yeah. I haven't heard of using it for short form.
Yeah, how do you use it differently to say an author might use it?
Well, we've got templates, for instance, for like websites. So in Scrivener, you can start a template and, so it starts with, there's a headline. So the way the Scrivener works is it's broken down into what they call cards. So they're sort of discrete sections of the document, and you can have as many of them as you want. The advantage of that is when you say to yourself on Tuesday morning, I just need to look at that second section again. You know what it's like. You open the Word document, you open the headline saying, like, I don't like the headline. You're like, so you start pissing around with the headline in the first paragraph. So the first paragraph has been worked on like granddad's car, right? For the last
Yes.
50 years, you polished it, you buffed it. The second section that you were supposed to be working on, you ran out of time. So you can just look at the bit that you need to look at. So we have it in that way. And then you can move sections up. So if you're writing a landing page and you've got it all the separate bits, and so you're thinking, okay, well, this bit deals with that objection. And then you think to yourself, do you know what? I think that objection's more important. You can just drag it up. So all of that text moves up. Whereas in a Word document, if you're copying and pasting, you leave a fragment of it behind, and you don't copy and paste all of the right bits. It just keeps it all brilliantly organized. You can have comments against it, footnotes, linking away to other parts of the document. I write in Markdown if you really want to go to a totally nerdy level. So Markdown is it's a computer language, but don't let that scare you, for formatting. So if you write hash, as in like a hashtag, space, and then a sentence, that sentence is treated as a heading. If you do 2 hashtags and a sentence, that's a second level heading. So what it means is that when I write in Scrivener and export to Word, all the formatting is done correctly. Whereas if you work in Word, you know how you can have a headline that's 16 points and bold, but you can accidentally have made something else 16 points and bold, but it's not marked as a headline, so it doesn't show up in the table of contents. And so Markdown and Scrivener together, massively, massively good. So Notion, Scrivener, best tools I've got, and of course, yes, ChatGPT.
Wow, you made me want to check out Scrivener again. Yeah.
It's honestly, when you get it, it's like Twitter in the beginning. I was on Twitter early enough that my handle was Stephen. So that's how early I was on it. And then I couldn't see the point of it because you don't know anybody on it. Nobody's talking about it. So you just got this blank feed and you're like, I don't get it. And Scrivener is kind of similar in that you get it and you're like, I don't understand. And it's only when you invest in actually doing things in Scrivener. And Scrivener is a folder more than it is a document. So you can keep your PDFs within the Scrivener file. So you can reference things and link to things that are in that document and so on that aren't part of the copy that you're producing, but are within the folder. So you can have the PDF to one side. And I mean, there's just all sorts of things, as I say, that you can do that are so clever with it. But when you open it, it's just it's an empty box.
Yeah.
It's not until you start using it that you start to fully appreciate how valuable it is.
So
Amazing.
Yeah.
Gosh, we could talk to you. Yeah, we could talk to you all day, couldn't we?
We could. So brilliant. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about where our listeners can find you.
Well, if you go to Taleist, which is TALEIST.agency, that's all about us there and what we do. And I did think, because email newsletters I think are amazing, but then of course you need a list. We've got a guide to building a list. So if your listeners are interested in that, they can go to taleist.agency/byte, as in content byte, BYTE, and download our guide to growing your mailing list. It's called Overnight Mailing List. And the idea is it's 12 simple tips for growing a mailing list. including one tip that's so simple you'll think I'm an idiot but I hadn't done it. One day it occurred to me, oh, why haven't I done this? And it's the stupidest thing in the world that I hadn't, but I figured if I hadn't done it, other people may not have done it. So it's really simple stuff. And if I could leave people with one piece of advice about that, is you don't need a big mailing list to run a 6-figure business. You need a mailing list with the right people on it, and you're off to the races. So it's not about having 10,000 people. If you've got 100 of the right people, your mailing list could be the most profitable thing in your business.
Fantastic.
We'll definitely pop that link into the show notes, as well as how you can find Stephen. This has just been fabulous. Stephen, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who's listening. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a rating and review on the platform where you find your podcast.
Fantastic. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.